Thank you so much for joining Dental Marketing Theory, a podcast by Gary Bird. In today's episode, Gary talks with Eva Sadej. Eva is the founder and CEO at Medbar. They chat about her journey as a dental entrepreneur, the flexibility it takes to make a business idea succeed, and why the future of healthcare is mobile. As always, please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment, as all of those things really help to get the word out about dental marketing theory. Hope you enjoy today's show.
Eva, so good to have you on today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to tell the story.
Absolutely. I have a quick story to share with you before we dive into this. So I am pretty new at this podcasting thing. We've done a couple handfuls of them, and I've been researching your story and what you're doing, and a little bit nervous to interview you, but super excited at the same time. Just all the awesome stuff that you've done. I've been like in my head, like I want to get everything perfect. So I'm super. I got that like weird balance of butterflies and excitement. And I'm hoping that they all start flying in formation here in my stomach here pretty soon. So I want to start and kick us off with your story. We've talked about it briefly, but I would love for you to share kind of how you got into the dental industry, but even before that, how your family, your grandma specifically, how she got started in Poland, what she used to do, and then how that eventually led you here to the States and how you became this ultimate entrepreneur. So would you mind sharing that with our listeners today?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the humble remark at the beginning. You're awesome too. Never doubt yourself. I have butterflies as well in being interviewed by you. So just wanted to make it two-way. So I was born in Poland to parents who both were from farming families. So if you see my last name, it's Polish, but it's not quite Polish. It says Sadej. So I think the Ottoman Empire came through or something. And Sadej is actually a variant of Sadiq, which means fruit grower in whatever Middle Eastern language. Anywho, so from farming villages, parents met. We came to America, and our heritage is Polish. And during the time that my grandparents were alive, my grandma actually was a Holocaust survivor.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, so she was hiding Jews in her home, and then she got swept up in the raids as the Nazis came through Poland. So she's definitely a fighter, and I think I've got some of her blood.
Definitely, most definitely. So wow, that is amazing. I actually didn't know that part, so thank you for sharing that. So eventually, your grandma, and your grandparents in Poland, they are farmers. Your parents end up coming to the States. Roughly, how old were you when you moved over here?
I was 3 years old when I moved over here.
Great. And then walk me through, I know your family, you have a lot of family that went through medical school before you. Kind of walk me through that and what that was like being part of a family that went in that direction.
So funny enough, when you're a Polish immigrant, you go into some linear career path. That's what we do. So either go into medicine or finance. Basically, and now a bit into software engineering. That seems to be the new trend. But my brothers, as well as my sister, they all went into medicine. Got two brothers and one sister. My brothers are doctors and my sister's a nurse practitioner. And so, when they chose those career paths, they were all about study hard, do the instructions set out for you, and you will prosper. For me, I was interested in that path too. I was good at school. I can do linear things that I'm told. I'll chop wood for a very long time. And so, but when I was in college, and I was pre-med, and I had my first internship. It happened to be as a marketing intern, because it's hard to get internships when you're a freshman in college. So I went into for a marketing internship. And then when I got my paycheck, they paid me like $13 an hour, which I was like, oh, that's a lot. I offered them $9 and they were like, that's below minimum wage. And I was like, oh, okay. They gave me 13. But when I saw it, I saw the tax rate on it. And when I understood taxes when I was younger, I thought it was like 0.45%. I didn't realize it was 45%. I mean, I had less than that, but just as an example.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that that's what's taken out of paychecks. So then I started doing the math, and with medical school debt, just using my example from my brothers, I kind of lined out how long it would take for them to pay that back, given average salaries for doctors. And it seemed crazy to me because it meant it was double the time to pay it back. And I was like, oh, okay, it kind of fits in the life timeline. You can have a baby by 35. I guess you can pay it off by year X. And it just wasn't working that way. And so I freaked out. And everyone was going through economics. It seemed to be like kind of a sheep following the herd into finance and economics. And I hadn't known much about it. I went into math and science high school. So I went into economics because I knew that you're independent, right? When you leave college, you're able to get a job. It'll pay you well, ideally 6 figures, and you'll be able to pay off your debt pretty fast and earn and save money.
Yeah. So, and the whole school debt thing, that's even more of a problem now, right? Because it's just kept climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing. And so how did that kind of change your decision? Like, what direction did that end up pointing you in, and where did that end up bringing you to where you are today?
So I was pre-med, found out about this tax thing, saw this debt thing with my siblings, and was no longer pre-med, basically. And so in finding other opportunities, that's where I looked at finance. How can I save money? How can I be independent? And so I went into that, and after college, I worked for a hedge fund. I was in their technology program, then their management program, then their commodities program. I kind of moved around because I didn't know what I was doing. I was in my early 20s, just trying to find my fit. And after a while, it wasn't, oil prices weren't that interesting to me.
So that's the kind of hedge fund that you were in, where like commodities and things like that?
Yeah. It was called Bridgewater. It's up in Connecticut. They study a lot of things, but I happened to be on the commodities team and was getting a little bored. And what has always interested me are scientific facts. Like I was your best cat dissector in high school when I was still gunning for pre-med. And, I never got rid of that kind of passion for science and, just casually reading and having trouble going to the dentist on my hours that were at a financial firm because I worked like 13 hours a day. I thought about this dental thing, and I read up about how the mouth and body are connected, and it's almost a scientific hidden fact that's nowhere in our education, that your mouth and its health, like periodontal disease, could double your risk of heart attack, stroke, and diabetes. That's crazy. No one knows that when they're going through traditional education. And so that fascinated me. So when I wanted a career change, I thought of the different places I could innovate. And I wrote down a list of 20 different startup ideas. Where I ended up was dental, long story short. Because the idea of Flossbar was understood by many. They saw the problem, obviously, of access to care in dental. And so that's the way I went. I'm not a dentist. I'm not from a dental family. I, have not been traumatized by dentists. There isn't the typical reasons. It was kind of a random but linear path.
That is so cool. So real quickly, I'm going to dive into Flossbar here in a second, but out of curiosity, because I know you have a brain for this kind of stuff. What were some of the, if you can share them, what were some of the other ideas that were on your short list of 20?
Oh man, they were horrible.
Okay. So they were bad ideas, and they were just like, it was easy to pick Flossbar because it was so good.
Yeah. Like one of them was, I called it, Bagalicious. It was like, how can you take the spare capacity of Uber trunks and have people who are shopping and holding their stuff, or they're going to the dance club and don't want to hold their jacket and put it messy in a corner, because these are my day-to-day problems back then. How can you have Uber drivers pick them up and then give it back to you? And it just didn't make sense, because like there's not enough of them. What do you think about it?
Well, first of all, I think you were onto something. They ended up creating Uber Eats, which is basically just a fill-in of picking up food. I know it's not coats, but they ended up coming out with Uber Eats, and that wasn't too far away from what you were talking about there. So you were onto something. I think you have a very, very sharp mind when it comes to those kind of things. So let's go back to Flossbar. So Flossbar is this idea that you put on a piece of paper. It has 19 other ideas. Flossbar ends up at the top of your list. Walk me through what it took from writing it on that piece of paper until you actually launched Flossbar.
So people who have been tracking the story a little bit are probably confused with how we ended up doing what we ended up doing, because we've changed like 4 times what we actually do. So what was the original idea of Flossbar? Like, what was on that Excel sheet of different ideas? It was actually that same spare capacity concept as the lovely idea of Bagalicious at the time, which is, what's spare capacity in dental? Well, dentists leave their offices at roughly 5:30, 6 o'clock, and there's lots of people who want appointments after work or before work, but we were targeting after work. So our first model was actually, how can we stick hygienists into dental offices in their evening and weekend to be able to run pop-up services for the most common parts of what patients are looking for, which are cleaning, x-rays, and whitening.
Got it. So that was phase 1. So did you actually end up launching that, or did that never get off the ground, that portion of it?
So we ended up launching that. And we saw a couple hundred patients, and so it was in pilot phase. But what we were learning about that is that the one is we were fighting for New York City costs of customer acquisition. I mean, in dental, it's like $180 to secure a patient. So even though we had a cool brand and a millennial brand and all this stuff, I mean, we're able to get it down to $90 cost of customer acquisition. But then when you looked at, where we were pricing cleanings to be affordable and all of that stuff, the economics were, when you fully bake them, were putting us in the negative. And I wasn't a direct to customer marketing specialist. That wasn't my forte. And I couldn't really afford any of those people yet. So we just kind of went to phase 2.
And so what did that look like? What was the difference between phase 1 and phase 2?
So phase 2 used the concept of pop-ups yet again. That kind of mobile overlaying upon something. However, rather than targeting dental offices and using their spare capacity, we targeted employers and their spare conference room capacity.
That is awesome. So now you're using their capacity. You're not setting up maybe away from where the patients are at. You're going directly to the patients. So you said your cost per acquisition, 180. Then I saw you kind of probably learned some things, got it down to, in the below 100. What did that do to your cost per acquisition when you actually went directly to the patients and set up in the office?
So it's interesting to calculate, but I'll calculate it straight from when you get the HR person to agree that you will come in and you will be their mobile dentistry provider. After that, I mean, we were spending at co-working places, because that was actually our first mobile experience was at WeWork, co-working spaces. So our cost of customer acquisition was about $7.
That is which is like unheard of in the dental space, right? So as a marketer, I'm just like, that's almost free, right? Like it's getting down there towards the free range. So that is amazing. And again, this goes back to the entrepreneur brain and how you're working through these problems and how you're like, okay, well, that's too expensive. That doesn't work. Where a lot of people would have said, let's try a different idea. You figured out a way to get that cost down. So now you're down at $7. And was there a next phase? Was there a phase 3 to Flossbar before you moved into Medbar?
Yeah, we have 4 phases. It's very exciting.
So what happened with phase?
The way.
So what happened in phase 3? What was the difference between phase 2 and phase 3?
Okay, so in phase 2, we learned we could get down to $7 at a co-working space. And then if we went to employers, which have a central influencer, it's one company, we could get down to like $2.50. So that was really good. And then it was all about how can you maximize the day? Like, you're already there, your costs are high, great, it costs you $2.50 to $2.50 to get a patient through, but you're only getting like 10% of the population. They're not all piling on for dental appointments. And so you keep having to sell to bigger and bigger employers, which have slower and slower sales cycles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so an interesting thing we found is that vision and hearing services can actually be done by technicians that learn the vision and hearing service equipment and are remotely supervised by an optometrist and an audiologist.
Oh, okay. So it's similar to like the way X-ray has developed, right? And the way that kind of industry is moving as well, where you can have, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding you, can have somebody there running the equipment that gets a certificate of some sort, as long as they're being overseen, but that person overseeing them is not actually in the building. They can be somewhere else. That is so cool. So that was phase 3. So now you have your $2, $3 cost per acquisition on the dental side, and now you're adding in vision and hearing on top of that, and you're starting to walk through that?
Yes, exactly. We found that we're only getting about 10% of the population into dental appointments, even though it didn't cost us much. We're kind of maxing out, sometimes 20%. But once you add on different services to a dental appointment that are interdisciplinary, we actually saw immediately a 15% boost in appointment volumes that our percentage of population, where we were getting about 25% of the population into the chair.
Wow.
And that was an interesting psychological marketing phenomenon, because on one hand, they're getting more value. It makes economic sense for the employee. If they don't have to go get 3 appointments, now they're right here. But it also makes you more legit at the employer. Like, you're not fly by night, they're one service, one hit wonder. You're actually their provider across 3 service lines, and it's a trust sale. So by doing all of it, we were more established and more trusted, was actually the feedback we were receiving.
Got it. And then how, and I have several questions around that, but I'm going to wrap that in after this. So how did we move from phase 3 to phase 4? What did that look like?
So COVID slapped us, as it slapped everybody.
Yes. Yep.
So as preventative dental care, which was our main hook, was banned, unfortunately, by COVID. And then no one cared about vision and hearing services during a pandemic. And so April 2020, we had 0 revenue. It was horrible. And so we had to put our heads together and come up with something else. And we called it Medbar. And it was one of the first movers for corporate COVID testing, as well as COVID testing at dental offices and COVID testing at pharmacies. You see, we leveraged the fact that we had relationships with employers who now wanted COVID testing for their employees, but we also got the dental community involved. And we got them involved by using the same exact I guess I call it technician telehealth arbitrage thing, which is, all right, you can learn a technical skill like doing a vision device with an optometrist remotely. So the country was like, well, dentists can't do COVID tests. And funny enough, these days, dentists weren't able to do COVID vaccines. Now dentists could do COVID vaccines because the country finally needed them. That whole debate of we're chopped liver until you're desperate. America. So anywho, So anyway, so if you have the dentists and the hygienists take off their dentist and hygienist hats in the context of COVID testing and instead become COVID testing technicians, per the definition of the CDC, being that anyone who is a healthcare worker can COVID test as long as the entity has a CLIA license and you have a doctor's prescription. So again, that telehealth to enable technicians, we're able to get dental offices to COVID test and local pharmacies to COVID test, and built like a 50 location mini empire to actually get that done.
Yeah, that's so cool. So you were one of the first movers, and it sounds like the reason that you were able to move into that so quickly, you built your infrastructure already. Obviously, you didn't know COVID was coming, but you had that infrastructure built, and you were able to pivot over, and then you figured out the loophole through that, the telehealth side. So that's amazing. And I know you guys did over 300,000 COVID vaccinations. Is that right? 300,000?
We've seen about 300,000 patients across COVID testing, flu shots, COVID vaccinations, urine tests, other random things we do. As you can see, we seem to accumulate random healthcare services that we do. And there's a reason. It's because they're fundamentally all the same.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like they're underserved for the people who need them when they need them. Is that right? Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Like as long as you've got the humans, the compliance, the supply lines, and the workflow technology, it doesn't matter what lightweight health service you're doing at the workplace or at a dental office. It's fundamentally all the same.
I love the way you're thinking. Now, the other thing that I think you are onto as well is I'm starting to see more and more dental practices that take the whole health approach, where they're not just thinking about the mouth, but they're thinking about everything else. What do you see coming from that angle? Where do you see the market developing when it comes to that kind of approach?
I think it actually produces a major win-win. And that win-win is really for the patient. When we start this conversation, we were talking about how debt is a big problem, student debt. Mm-hmm. And how it compelled me to actually not go become a doctor, or maybe if I went down the doctor route, I would have became a dentist. Who knows? Oddly fascinated with teeth. But I didn't go that route because I didn't like debt. And I bet people who went that route do not like their debt. And so dental offices are incentivized to maximize what they're able to do for patients. And there's a couple ways you can maximize. You can maximize vertically or horizontally to be able to generate the most revenue in the day. And for many patients who are actually fine and healthy, they may not need the root canals and the braces and all that kind of stuff. But you'll generate more on the root canals and the braces and the other stuff that's high margin. And then it creates that ethical dilemma of big dental and forcing treatments and all this blah, blah, blah. And when you start integrating medicine into your practice, because you're doing a huge layer of preventative care, you can actually do much more for the patients, but do it horizontally for each body part instead of vertically for the depth of every tooth. And you're actually able to generate the same amount of income from that appointment in the same amount of time period. It's a crazy hack that, like, if everybody did medical, they'd one, dental wouldn't get that upsell reputation. And two, a lot of patients would get a ton of healthcare all in one go and save time, save money, and be healthy with more touch points.
Yeah, I love that. So, and it's true, because I look at it from a slightly different angle, but it's the same in the conclusion. If a patient's coming into the office, let's say, and I have a totally healthy mouth, but my teeth are a little bit crooked, then they're going to say, hey, do you want Invisalign, right? And that's an easy upsell of something that really is cosmetic, right? Like, it's not necessary for my health, but I may or may not want it. And if they ask everybody and 10% of people say yes, it's a pretty good revenue generator, and it allows that dentist to stay open and treat everybody. And that makes total sense. But the patient doesn't always feel that, right? Sometimes the patient feels like you're just trying to sell me more stuff. You're trying to sell me more veneers or whatever it may be. And what I hear you saying is, okay, come in, I got the healthy mouth, but maybe I need glasses, or maybe I need some other service, hearing aids, or whatever it may be. And those are very, very practical in nature. And also, doesn't that root me in with the practitioner even more if I'm getting all those ancillary or those beginning stages of healthcare? So you're not only going to maximize your profitability, but you're also going to create that longer lasting, as you alluded to earlier, that longer lasting relationship where you were building that trust with the employer, but you're also building it with the patient at the same time. So that is really, really cool. And so do you see that? Do you see that formula? And I'm just working through my thoughts here. Do you see that formulating on the dental side and seeing the dentist start to add those services? Or do you see more on the medical side of like, you're going to your GP and they start to add in dental? Who do you think is going to get that first? Or is it going to be some kind of hybrid like what you're doing?
You know what's funny? I think it's actually neither of them. I think it's the pharmacists.
Oh, okay. So walk me through that.
Yeah, so mom and pop pharmacies are getting hit hard by the major retail chains. And so because they see that happening in their industry and their bottom lines being hit, and so many things expanding for pharmacists in terms of abilities to do something. Like, for example, Governor Cuomo in New York, he allowed pharmacists to do COVID testing really quickly before other states did. And so those retail pharmacists are hungry, and they're getting cannibalized very, very clearly by the CVSs, the Walgreens, and all of that. So the pharmacies that we first started targeting DSOs to get them to COVID test, and then we got a couple of dental offices. It was fine. But then our community pharmacies were actually completely outperforming, asking if they can do vision and hearing screenings, asking if they can do physicals, asking if they can get a doctor on a screen to write a script and talk to a patient, consistently innovating, asking if they can do allergy tests, asking like completely, like my time was being filled with pharmacy diversification consulting suddenly. When the dental offices were not going to that depth of creativity, they were kind of like dabbling in it. So I don't think doctors are going to add dental into their practice as fast because it's a lot. Dental's a lot. It's not that lightweight. You need all the stuff and the chair and the dentist and all that. And I don't think dentists are going to add medical fast enough into that. I think it's actually retail health.
Wow. And so why is it just because they are touching the patients so consistently and they see the wide breadth of issues that their patients have? Is that why they're adopting it so quickly, or is there something else there?
One is they need money. Two is that they have more touch points with the patient than the doctor and the dentist. Everyone's coming monthly to get their drugs, unless they're getting capsule and whatnot. Yeah, actually, those two.
Those are the main. Okay, that's awesome. I love that insight. Another big, and kind of pivoting on you a little bit, I know another big issue as people scale and they begin to open up a lot of dental practices is they run into capital issues. Walk me through some of the things that you experienced as you scaled and pivoted and scaled. How have you dealt with that? How are you similar to dental, or how might you be a little bit different in how you dealt with that?
Well, we're a DSO just like any other DSO. We're also an MSO, like any other MSO, medical support organization or services organization. And so capital for us, we're technically a startup. Like my investors have told me to stop calling the thing a startup because we've grown so much, and it's like, it makes you sound small. You're not a startup. And I'm like, Uber calls itself a startup. Aren't we a startup?
It's like Google. Google, everything Google does, it's in beta, right? So it's like Google Calendars beta, and it's like, I've had this for 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, basically. But just like any DSO, any MSO, and any startup thereof, raising capital is important because you're putting in a lot of money to get to where you are. Albeit the expectations for us are interesting in terms of different metrics that we're evaluated by. Like, we hadn't become actually profitable in terms of like from a net income perspective after all of your overhead and admin stuff and tech and everything. We hadn't become profitable until last year. because we were building and all investors cared about was top line revenue. No matter how you get it, make sure that like your gross margin, like your price minus your dentist doing something and some supply cost is profitable. Yeah, but your SG&A could be a ton higher because all they cared about is revenue. Now, if you valued us as a DSO, and imagine a big player was like coming to buy it, they're like, we value at, 7x EBITDA. And we're like, EBITDA is negative. And so it doesn't make sense. But if you value it at multiple times revenue, then it gets really interesting. So we're kind of the same, but kind of different.
Got it. Okay. That's great. And then where do you see the mobile component of this heading in the future? The last time we talked, you brought up entry points for like ambulances and different things like that. So where do you see this heading?
So mobile health, what is the future of mobile health, and what are the participants of the current state and of the future? The visiting nurses have been around for a while. Those are mobile health providers. Company flu shot programs have been around for a while. That's a very common thing. What COVID has created is a mad rush to go mobile, to do mobile healthcare services. And so the types of companies that have come into there, a lot of them have been laboratories, obviously because COVID testing, which can evolve into doing blood draws and evolve into doing a myriad, I don't know the word, myriad, there we go. Myriad of things. So they're coming in the game. And then ambulance companies are also coming in because they have vehicles. They're mobile. And what we're trying to do is get a lot of the retail pharmacies in the game too. They never go mobile. And they're the most innovative and open clinical partner collaborators that we've ever seen, frankly. And so what we're doing is really putting together a marketplace of these people. If our skill set is in the creativity of putting together various legal structures, creativity in finding business opportunities, ability to sell to corporations, ability to convince and lead people, why do we have to be in the game of being physically there? We rather just enable all of these mobile providers to do their thing and help them in those spots where they're weaker.
I love the way you're processing that. One of the things that came up as we worked through this was when you started, you're obviously younger and you were female. What were some of the advantages and disadvantages of that as you got started with Flossbar?
So I found age to be more the barrier versus gender. I turned 30, but I still look like 24 usually. So it's interesting the way that to get the first dental office to sign up with us back when we had this Airbnb style evening model. I was walking around by myself and everybody was shutting their door on me, telling me to go away. And so I grabbed my friend who was a dental student, and he happened to be Chinese. So he spoke Chinese, Chinese American. So he spoke English too, obviously. And I was like, you know what? We're going to flip this. You're going to walk around. You're going to talk. I'm going to follow you around with a clipboard. I'm going to pretend I'm your assistant, and we're going to get some deals. And he found this hilarious. So we walked around Chinatown, New York, and we're literally able to close a dental office, and closing meaning getting a deal with a dental office within 2 hours of walking around. And I've been walking around for days. And so what I've learned over that experience is the concept I've made up, which is called borrowed credibility. And so if you're not credible because whatever thing is running against you, youth, gender, disability, whatever it is, you can fight that fight and yell and women's rights and youth rights and whatever. It'll take a while. I think we should still yell about women's rights and discrimination and stuff like that. But in the interim, what I do is I just grab some dude to talk and take him with me. And their job is to either literally just get the deal and hand it to me, or when it's more about me and creating my credibility versus a weird sales workaround, what I do is I would take a senior male of some sort to a meeting, and their job is to, one, say smart things, two, defer hard questions to me, which makes me look smarter, or at least makes me known to be smart. Whatever,
Yeah.
you get my point.
Yeah.
You sometimes have to use these hacks. And so I've used these hacks pretty much the whole time at Flossbar and Medbar to get around this problem of youth and gender.
Got it. That is great. I love the way that you took a problem or a wall or an obstacle and you found a solution for it. And you know, a lot of people allow those things to stop them or to slow them down. And you said borrowed credibility. So I'm definitely going to note that. And that's a good call out right there. What are some ideas that you've had? Because you obviously had a lot of good ideas. You've had a lot of pivots of other things to other things that were successful. What were some ideas that didn't go quite as it planned?
Oh, so many. Let me at least give you three in no particular order. One was we tried to get COVID vaccines really early on. So then we worked with employers to try to get them COVID vaccines. And that didn't work out. We were just like, sorry guys, we're not getting allocations. So sometimes we get in over our heads a little bit. Like I usually create programs and kind of throw spaghetti at the wall, and a lot of the spaghetti sticks, but sometimes the spaghetti just doesn't work. And you just got to be honest that like we went over our skis, and hey, we can't offer you this, we can offer you that. So that's always a learning when you're innovating and moving really fast. A second thing that didn't quite work out are a lot of employee stuff. Like we've got pretty bad turnover rates at our company. We really move really fast, and so. And what I've learned over time is that you should take a long time to hire and a quick time to fire. And that's like a common, I think, Emmett DSO Secrets quote or whatever. Because like sometimes you're just on a grab for humans to do stuff because like business is up or business is down and you need this and you need that. And so, you know, a lot of people at our organization haven't worked out. And so we're 25 employees now. But when I look at the kind of the list in our database of people who have worked here, it's been like 60 people who have worked here. And so it's a little bad. So we definitely have to work on recruiting and retention and all that, but we're definitely learning. What else has not worked out? I don't know. Those two are top of mind.
Got it. And then where do you see your 10-year vision? Where do you see your company going over the next 10 years? Or what are some of the aspirations that you have?
So within the next 2 to 5 years, you know, we did a calculation that we're categorized as a technology company in a lot of the things we do. If you think of us, we're a marketplace. Think of us, we use IoT devices. We've automated the idea of healthcare event pop-up management in a serious way. And so we're classified as a tech company. And when you think of what does it take to become a $1 billion company, it doesn't mean your revenue actually has to be $1 billion. If you look at companies that are being listed on the stock exchange, it's all about what are you trading as a multiple of revenue. And so we believe that once we hit the 50 million a year mark, if we can make $50 million, we're a $1 billion company. So it's our kind of march to $1 billion strategy, but it's actually a march to 50 million strategy. So anyway, we hope to IPO in that time frame, and if not IPO, then sell to a strategic buyer, because some of us have worked really long and have upcoming kids to feed and things to pay for and parents to support.
That is so cool. I love the way that you worked through that too, because it's kind of like Tesla. It made me think of Tesla, because Tesla is valued like a tech company. And even though Ford has been around since the first car, right? And they have all these cars and they have all these sales and they have all these product lines. They're not a technology company. They're a car company. So they trade at a certain multiple. But Tesla is viewed as a technology company, not a car company. So it's valued differently. So there's different aspirations, different goals, and I can see definitely where your head's at and where you're heading with that. So that's really cool. Another question for you: if someone's an entrepreneur at Spirit, so you're obviously an entrepreneur, right? Like you get in, you get your hands dirty, you have these ideas. But at one point you were like, I'll be a dentist or I'll do something in the medical field. And I feel that the dental industry has a lot of people like that who didn't do the pivot early enough like you did. And they're like, you know what, I want to do more of this entrepreneurial stuff, build a DSO or build this other software or something along those lines. Or I don't want to be a hygienist anymore. I want to start a marketing company. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's knee deep in their career, but want to make that pivot?
I think my advice for people who are knee deep and want to pivot are twofold. One is, don't be afraid to talk about your idea. A lot of people who are new to entrepreneurship keep their idea close to their chest so then they can't get feedback on it because they're more worried if someone's going to steal their idea than they are about actually executing their idea and making sure it's a good idea. So it's kind of like the loose lips sink ships is a little counterproductive when you're a first-time entrepreneur because like what you're trying to get is feedback. So I think talk is really important. Don't talk to people who are obvious competitors and you don't trust. Yeah. But anyway, take that advice by and large. And then the second thing is startups require a lot of legal. Like for me, my best brainstorm people are actually my lawyers because I come up with a lot of stuff. And there's feedback of like, Eva, you come up with a lot of spaghetti, like why don't you choose something? And I'm like, it's all the same thing. Guys, don't you see it? It's all the same thing. It is one thing. But the lawyers are what make the idea real, and their lawyers are also who protect me. Because when you're starting out and you're coming from a different industry, you don't know people and you don't know stuff. You're just trying to do something. And so how can you make sure you don't fall into potholes of bad business deals, of learning for people who actually don't know what they're talking about, and from getting excited about partnerships and relationships with other entities without actually signing the paperwork and making it real. That kind of stuff is just such important business 101. And it's just clear traps that personally I fell in. Like this could be a whole Netflix series of things Eva has done wrong and then somehow saved. But I just don't want people to have to go through the same thing. Like get a good lawyer, have them help. It's worth the money.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. The big, especially the further along you go, the more you need that. And then, okay, so last question for you. So if someone wants to learn more about what you're doing or they want to learn more about you, where can they go? How can they find you?
Well, I'm in downtown New York City. We're in the financial district. So if anybody's in town, would love to have you come upstairs. Come grab one of our chai lattes from the machine. This is the only reason I walk to the office. I'm kidding. They're freaking fantastic. So yeah, come grab a chai latte in downtown New York City, or email me at eva@flossbar.com for a one-on-one conversation. Or if you want to join us and COVID test at your facility and learn about doing more than just dental, then support at medbar.com or support at flossbar.com. A rep will jump on the line and help you. And if they're misbehaving, call me and whatnot. Let me be kind of the catch-all, but please let me delegate a little too.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Great information, very, very impactful. Can't wait to get this out. And I'm going to include all these links right down below. So if you guys want to connect, please reach out, and you have a great day.
Thank you.